Welcome everybody to tonight's episode of Rachel and Oorah trying to face this very complex, new experience that nobody has experienced, not us, not our parents, not our grandparents. No one has ever experienced something like this. Completely across the world, we're all going through very similar types of whether or not it's complete quarantine, unfortunately sickness, some people, or whether or not it's just kind of social distancing and staying far away from everyone and trying to figure out what that means and how do I manage that and how do I go on with my life as usual when life is just not usual. So we are here to try to get some clarity on how to make this all work and hopefully give some divrei chizuk to help everyone move forward, some practical tips, and then we're going to open things up to an open Q&A for everyone to ask some questions. A lot of you have sent in questions beforehand, so we're looking forward to getting started. Okay, so my name is Rachel Burnham. For those of you who don't know, please everyone mute yourself if you can. I think everyone should be on full mute, but I can still hear some people, so if you're joining now, welcome, and just kind of hit your mute button so that we can get this properly recorded for everyone to enjoy later. Okay, so first of all, we have to acknowledge the obvious fact, which is, I'm sorry, before that, I forgot my introduction here. So Rachel Burnham, for those of you who don't know me, Oorah is here joining us. We're very, very lucky and honored to have her with us, the famous one and only Oorah. So I'm just going to give a very, very short 1-minute blurb about myself, just because most of you know me, some of you don't. But I've been told that when I just give a little bit of background, it's helpful perspective to people, for people to understand where I'm coming from. I myself was single for 14 years. It was a very difficult journey. Dated hundreds of guys, went on thousands of dates, had multiple broken engagements, and thank God found the right one at the age of 34. My husband had been previously married. His wife passed away. I was the first girl that he met since he had begun dating again. And so it was a process, it was a journey, and clearly not what we all expected. And so after that point, many people had asked me to get involved in speaking to singles. And so Date Great had kind of evolved, which is basically a service that helps singles work through a variety of all sorts of topics, whether or not you're writing your resume or you had a date and you're not quite sure what to do, or you're kind of stuck, or you're dealing with coronavirus and you don't know where to go from there. So that's a little bit about me. Oorah, do you want to give a little intro about yourself?
Sure. My name is Oorah. I live in Waterbury, Connecticut. I've been doing Shidduchim for about 19 years. I joined the Rebbetzins program when they opened up, and I'm honored and to be part of it and to be part of a wonderful crew of wonderful people who are really out there for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to help everybody along their journey.
Thank you, Oorah. So on to our topic for today. So I'd like to just start with kind of calling out the difficult elephant in the room, which is obviously, being single is a challenging state, whether or not you're 20 or you're 25 or you're 30, 35, whatever age you are at, being single is a challenging state. And even though many people can be successful and confident and happy in their own way, being single has many, many challenges. I'm not going to list them all, you know them already. And so even I, being single for 14 years, did not go through, COVID-19, social distancing in the way that it's going on today. So I can't even relate on that level to what you must be going through. But I know that it's got to be hard because being single makes one feel alone and isolated. So feeling alone and isolated, and now you can't either go out to weddings and be with your friends, or not quite sure how to date, or having trouble figuring out like who I could speak to, can't go to work, kind of at home. That is a very difficult nisayon, very difficult nisayon. And we're going to talk about some tips in which we can try to navigate this and make it a productive time. So I just want to call that out and say, Anochi B'Tzara, I'm davening for you. I know many others are. And, obviously we're davening for Shidduchim, but more than that, to just have peace of mind, to have that sense of internal calm, which a lot of us are struggling with now with all the, chaos and anxiety going on, so that everyone should just know that we are here because Hashem wants us to be here, that Hashem knows what's best for us, even though it could seem very much not that way, and that this is where we are, this is where we need to be, and we're going to make it through, and we're going to make it through together. So we are here to say, we're here for you, we want to help you through this together, and that's why we put this together. Obviously, tremendous yashar koach to Rachel Stavrowski and to Rabbi Leifer for putting this all together and arranging it. So tremendous hakaras hatov for that. And let's get started. So, what are we going to do during this time? What are we going to do? There's many different ways we can handle this challenge. We can choose to sit home and cry. I don't have dates. Even if I did have dates, I can't even, how am I going to go out and date them? Right? We can choose to obviously be positive. We can choose to take this time and reflect inward. And so we want to talk about some of those ways in which we could take this time and make it the most productive. So, I think that it's very important to acknowledge that sometimes not dating can contribute to your dating just as much as dating can. What I mean by that is when somebody is going to run a marathon and they decide, I want to run a 5K, it's not going to be very smart if they just get up one morning and say, how about if I run a 5K marathon tomorrow? Because they probably won't make it and they'll be exhausted, falling apart, aches and pains, and will say, forget it, I'm not doing that again. What the smarter thing to do is you say, you know what, I think I want to run a 5K in 6 months or a year, and really pace themselves and really plan accordingly and work out and have a trainer and set goals and really reach those goals so that when they actually get to the night before that real marathon, they are prepared, they are ready, and they are confident that they have what it takes to at least give it their best shot and have a really solid fighting chance. And so I would like to hope that this time, if you're not muted, please mute yourself. If you're on and you have not muted yourself, please mute yourself. Thank you. So I would like to think that many of us could take this time to look at our dating life that way and think about, well, if my dating is on hold right now because for whatever reason I can't go out or I'm choosing not to go out, then what can I be doing to prepare myself for dating? Maybe it's I need to work on getting that resume, polished up. Maybe I need to get some better pictures up there. Maybe I have some time to do a 2-3 minute video that I can send around to shutdown and introducing myself so they know who I am. And I know the Rebbetzins network shutdown would love that because it gives them more perspective in terms of who you are, where you're coming from, and more of a personal touch. Maybe it's time for me to say, you know what, like I find myself to be very indecisive. I find myself to be very anxious. I find myself to not really be clear on what I'm really looking for. I just kind of go when someone sets me up and I'm not really sure what I'm looking for. Now would be a great time to really try to iron out some of those kinks and figure out some of those things. So when this does, Mirza Hashem, very soon clear up and, die down, that we're able to be prepared and ready with a better foot forward than where we were before this all started. I would say that would probably be the best case scenario. So let's talk about, I want to just pause there. Leo, anything you'd like to introduce at this point?
Yeah, I think what you're saying is brilliant because it's giving the opportunity for people to recognize what their purpose is right now. Everyone is going through this. People who are married, people who are at work, home from work, people who are single, everyone's going through this. But as far as I want to bring to surface that many times a person will take a break. I'll call someone up, I have a shidduch idea. I say, thank you so much, I'm taking a break right now. Whatever the reason. Their heart was broken, they broke somebody's heart, they need mental, emotional time to themselves. And there's that time period to say, I need time for me to develop me. Now we know that Hashem is in control of the world, but very often we sort of take a certain stand of control, like I control my life and all the decisions that I can make for my life. But here, Hashem is saying, everyone's going on hold. Now, some people might still date. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about Skype dating. We're going to talk about speaking on the phone. We're going to speak about taking a pause from dating. But the general way of dating, we know, at least today, is very different than the way it was last week. And we don't even know what the coming days are going to be. But the one thing that we know for sure is that Hashem has in mind that right now, you're taking a break. to some level, to some degree. And with that break, with Rachel Burnham, we're going to develop strategies and ways for us to better ourselves and to prepare ourselves that when we go back out there in the dating field, we have a better sense of self, and we're a better candidate for that relationship that we're now going to enter.
Thank you. Thank you, Leora. I'm just going to remind everyone to please mute yourself because it can be disruptive when we're trying to allow everyone to hear clearly. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about some of those optional scenarios. I'm not going to give any psak halacha here. That's not my place. I'm not going to be your parent and tell you what to do, nor your doctor. We're just going to visit various options of different practical tips of what we can do here. And then you will decide with your parents or with your Rav or with your doctor, mentor, what makes the most sense for you in particular. And we just like to give a few options here. So let's start with the option of, should I be dating at all? Okay. So, I say this very respectfully. But the nisayon for both a guy and a girl are very, very different. Okay. For a girl, waiting could be something that she's been doing for a very long time, and continuing to wait is very hard because I'm already waiting all the time for a date, and I'm already trying to work on myself, and I'm already, have all this extra time waiting for a guy to say yes. So why do I have to continue to wait? And for that, I say we know that Hashem knows, where you live, knows your address, and knows where to find you. And it could be Hashem saying, you know what, I'm going to save you a few bad dates, and I'm just going to wait till it's the right person, and then you don't have to actually waste so much time or energy or emotional drain to go out when it's actually really wrong for you. And that might be a girl's nisayon. For a boy, I think very clearly, and again, I say this very gently and respectfully, but I think it's important that a boy understands what a girl feels like when she just is frozen waiting for an answer, or when less options might be coming her way. And I think it's important for a guy to stop and pause and think about that and understand where a girl is coming from. I think that there are different nisayonos. For instance, a boy often will just go out and go out and go out and go out because there are names that come up and he looks into it and it seems okay and he just continues going. But what ends up happening is we don't often take time to pause and think about, where are we going? How did I get here? Should I be going out with girls like that? No time to take a breather. So for instance, when you go to the gym and you work out, they don't recommend that you work the same muscle group every single day. They recommend that either you work out every other day, every third day, or you alternate exercises for different muscle groups so you're not working the same muscles exactly the same time. And so the reason for that is because every time you exercise, you kind of tear a muscle, it needs to heal. Tear a muscle, it needs to heal. And as you do that, the muscle strengthens over time, okay? When a boy is continuously going out, going out, going out, there is no time for him to catch his breath, to really reflect, and he's always looking behind his shoulder for the next shotgun, the next idea, the next resume to show up. That's not a healthy way to really find the right person, and it's definitely not a way to really take the most time and focus in the girl that's right in front of you at this moment. Now listen, you could do whatever you want. You don't have to listen to me. But I've just seen from my experience, and I know that Leora has seen from a lot of her experience, that it's very important to take stock in what worked in a relationship and what didn't. Because dating is a process of self-discovery. And as you're dating, you're discovering yourself. Because until you're with somebody else, you only see yourself in your own perspective. You don't see yourself from somebody else's perspective. And so it's very, very useful to be able to take that time to think, to prioritize, to figure out what's really important to you. What are my needs as opposed to what I think I might want? What things are actually working as opposed to just this rat race of more resumes and what more resumes? And is more dates actually that beneficial to me? So for instance, in the shtetl, when they had a good option that came up, they really tried really, really hard to make that option work. Very, very hard to make that option work. And it reminds me of when I had, when the Iron Curtain fell and the Russians started coming in. So they came into a grocery store and they saw 50 different types of cereal, and it was just so overwhelming. They were used to some bread and some potatoes and some vegetables, and that's it, right? And that's it. You know what they ate? Bread, potatoes, some vegetables, and whatever combination they could make with those simple foods. And so the Shidduch world has become this potpourri of variety and endless options, which makes a person feel like they have endless options. For a man, for a guy, it could feel like, well, I can always just find another girl. And that's very exciting and very attractive. Girls want to go out with me, shadchanim like me, people want to go, marry me. This is great. I've got so many options. I feel so good. At the end of the day, a guy's coming home to usually an empty home or an empty roommate apartment. There's no dinner on the table. There's no one to keep him company, and there are no cute kids, sleeping in the other bedroom. So the reality of making one relationship work is challenging. It takes effort. It takes communication skills. It takes perseverance and really working through things. But that can yield tremendous, tremendous fulfillment. So the nisyonos are different. And for the girls really have to be patient and really have to continue to do what they've been doing and hold on tight for the ride. Hashem knows where he is. I firmly believe that when things like this happen, it brings out a deeper side in all of us, because we realize, wait a second, this is big. This is huge. The whole world has shut down. People aren't able to have chasanas. My husband hasn't gone to a minyan since Thursday because we're in total shutdown here. You can't even find a minyan in town here. This is serious, right? And so it makes us reflect, and it makes us introspect and say, what's really important? Is it really important that, when someone just gave me a no for a boy because he was 2 inches shorter than she had dreamed? Is that really what's important? Or is it that, life is short and life is important, and building a family and a home is important, and that's something I really want and I really could have? And how much effort am I going to try to make that right relationship right in front of me work? And so we're going to talk about some practical tips now. Let me pause if Oorah has anything that she'd like to.
Oh, I'm not shy. I'll chime in whenever.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to jump into some practical tips here. Okay. So here is the spectrum of options. If you have met a girl a couple of times and things are going nicely, then if the two of you decide that you're both comfortable to continue on Zoom or Skype or FaceTime or whatever it is you choose, then that might be a very good option for you. I'm just going to visit this option. We'll visit all of the options, and you're going to choose what works best for you. So some of the options to do that is A, continue dating as it goes. Try to prepare some kind of game that you can both play. There's all sorts of interesting kind of virtual aquariums, virtual museums, all sorts of interesting reading material that you could read separately and then discuss. So be prepared that if you're going to be doing continuous Zoom or FaceTime, it could be more awkward, and it could need more preparation before the date so that you're prepared to not just sit there and have nothing to say. Oh, what are you doing all day? Nothing. What am I doing all day? Nothing. Oh, this is boring. No, don't go into your FaceTime like that. You need to be prepared, okay? If we're going for a walk and a talk and we're going to a restaurant, naturally things come up. But when we're FaceTiming somebody, there's nothing coming up. It's just you and me. So you need to do extra preparation for that. As a guy, instead of planning where you're going, plan about what you're talking about. What books have you read? Maybe you'd like to send her a link to a great museum, and you can both visit the museum together and discuss it. So be prepared, just like you try to find where could you park, and how much is the restaurant, and where would the lounge be. Just like you would do that, you need to be prepared for these FaceTime Zoom dates so that you don't come up wondering why you have nothing to say and then go back to the shopper and say we had nothing to say. If you show up unprepared, you will both come back saying that was boring, we had nothing to say. So don't set yourself up for failure, set yourself up for success. Okay, so that would be FaceTime and Zoom. Yeah, Oorah?
I want to chime in. Okay,
Sure.
I'm ready.
Go for it.
Another thing I want to add in is that a lot of pressure sometimes on the guys that they have to plan everything. Typically speaking, which probably isn't happening now, they have to pick the girl up, right, traveling to her, and then they have to decide where they're going, and it costs them money. There's a lot of effort that comes from the guys putting into the date. For the girls, what they're putting in is they are getting ready, and it does take much longer for them to get ready and get well prepared. But then again, at the end of the day, the guy has to drive home. So just to understand, it's not a versus girl thing. It's just an understanding that the guy and the girl should understand each other. Okay, so what I want to add in here is many times, if I have out-of-town dates where the guy goes to the girl, he automatically gets huge brownie points for that one, for flying out to the girl, driving out to the girl. But the second thing is that I'll say to the girl, he's come to your area. Can you do him a favor? Can you plan the date? He's coming to you. it's your place. It's your domain. He doesn't know where to go. He doesn't want to take you to the place he Googles online only to find out that all your friends are there every day. It doesn't work so well. So I'll always say, do the guy a taiva and help him date you in your area. So on a Zoom date, I would recommend guys and girls. It's not one person's responsibility for the communication. Communication works both ways. Both of you are fully responsible for it. Guy, please prepare. Girl, please prepare. Hachana is everything. Please bring it to the table. Another thing to add in about Zoom is nobody expects you to treat a Zoom date like, let's go here, now let's go here, now let's go here. Oh, it's 3 hours later. Now, obviously, if your Zoom is going great, that's wonderful. But there's a perfect understanding that Zoom is not in person. And it doesn't have to be as long as an in-person date, whether it's a first date, whether it's a seventh date, it doesn't have to be the same. And you have to respect the, it almost gets tricky, like to feel chemistries when you're on Zoom. But respect it, be okay with it. Say, okay, I get that this is a little bit more difficult. It's a little bit more awkward. It's not as natural. I have to stare at you the whole entire time while I'm here. Yes, it can be a little bit intense sometimes. So let's lighten it up. Let's accept that it could be a little odd, and it's okay if you sort of say to yourself at a certain time, we're gonna, you're sort of prepared to end it respectfully. And also coming up with an ending that's not awkward is also something, Rachel, maybe you could help us. We could use some good tips about how to end a Zoom date.
Okay, so first, so let's talk about that. But first, I just want to say that I've gotten a lot of comments like, well, I just don't do FaceTime. It's just not ideal. I just don't feel comfortable. People, none of this is comfortable. I haven't left my house in days. I haven't worked. My kids are with me all day. I can't clean for FaceTime. None of this is ideal. I love my kids. But I'm just saying, none of this is ideal for anybody. What we're trying to do is make do with a situation which is not comfortable and not ideal. And I would urge you to focus on one thing. Dating in general is not always comfortable. If you want to be comfortable, you should go to a nice, relaxing restaurant with a friend and get some nice drinks and relax with them. That could be relaxing and enjoyable. Dating is meant for a purpose of the end goal, which is to get married. And so sometimes we have to do things that might not be as comfortable because we have an end goal in mind. And so Skyping, FaceTiming, Zooming, that's all part of the potential discomfort, a little bit awkward, not so ideal. But we're doing this for a reason. Obviously, I usually recommend that people meet face-to-face first before they Zoom, because it's much easier to have a Zoom once you've already met somebody, feel a little chemistry, had a good date or two, and then you go into Zoom. But we can't really be so picky now. It's not really such an option. So getting back to Leora's question about how to end a date. So we can prepare a few endings. First of all, I actually think that it's ideal if you set up a time in which the first date should take place. So if you say, Zoom dates are usually shorter than regular dates because they're more intense and a little bit more awkward. So I would say no more than a first date being 45 minutes. That's even a lot. It could be half an hour, 45 minutes, and set up a time that it's going to be 45 minutes so that nobody has to feel uncomfortable when we end this at 45 minutes. So if I look at my watch and I say, okay, it's 45, you know what? I feel like I don't want to, I'm sure I told you 45 minutes. I want to keep to my time. Or we can say like, you know what, it's getting late. I think I'm going to head to bed. Any of these very natural endings are fine. Just be honest. Like, I'm not really such a Zoom person. So just Zoom in general is just not so comfortable for me. So I'm feeling like I've kind of like filled up my cup with as much as I can take with FaceTime. That's like, that's just me, has no reflection on you. You can prepare what you're going to say, but I think the best thing to do is to make up beforehand so no one has to be uncomfortable with how long this is. If this is going really well and the two of you lose track of time and you're just on the phone for longer and it's like dates that are later on, not a first date, that's fine. Enjoy it. If it goes well, that's fine. I've even had people that wanted to go out to eat together. So he brought her dinner and she brought his dinner and they sat by the computer and it's like, oh, what are you eating? What are you eating? And they, I dated my husband like this because we were in different states. So that can work as well. So that is the FaceTime, Zoom, Skype option. Let's talk about a few other options because there are some people who are not going to want to do that. If you're new and joining, please mute yourself. Thank you. So let's talk about some other options of what to do. There are some people that have, whether or not they're speaking to doctors or family or vendors. If you've just recently joined, just please mute yourself. Thank you. So some people will actually be going out if that's what they've been told they can do. Different states have different regulations. New York is kind of a few days behind where Maryland's up to. So certain things like public schools have just recently closed. We've been closed for a couple days beforehand. So the best thing to really do in that kind of scenario, if you both agreed to go out and you're both comfortable going out in person, then I would not have you pick her up in the same car. You do not want to be sharing the same air, seriously, okay? And you should just meet at that location, preferably outside, a park, a boardwalk, someplace where you can just walk around and stand a very nice 6 to 7 feet away from each other. I know it's awkward. It's going to be awkward. I mean, there are parts of this that are just awkward, people. Like, this is how we're going to have to call it out. It's just awkward. But again, we're doing this for a purpose, okay? And then she'll get in her car and go home, and you'll get in your car and go home. And even that, some people won't be comfortable to do. And don't judge anyone if they're comfortable or not comfortable. Everyone has their reasons about what their doctor said, what their parents, Rav, mentor said. So you have to just kind of respect that everyone's coming from different places. And that could be the face-to-face time. And I would not make it hours and hours long. I would try to keep it to a minimum, just because with everything going on, and this is changing day by day. This whole Corona thing is changing day by day. So we don't even know if we're going back to work, if there's going to be school for the rest of the year. Nobody knows anything. We are just trying our best to keep it up to date day by day and do the best that we can. And I think everyone's really cutting everyone else slack because this is difficult. I want to address something else. There's a tremendous amount of anxiety during this time. And if you are one of those people and you're going through a lot of anxiety with Corona, try to be sensitive to the person that you're dating. If this is something that you're encountering, everyone experiences something like this differently. And so we just want to be sensitive and understanding that, everyone experiences things differently, and we don't want to judge anybody. There were a few other ideas in terms of dating. There's also the good old-fashioned telephone. Some people are more phone people than they are face-to-face people. You might want to warm up a first date by having a nice conversation and seeing where that can go. And then as the conversation goes better and you're feeling more comfortable, maybe you might need 1 or 2 or 3 conversations, and then you want to move into a Zoom or a FaceTime. So you need to know yourself. You need to communicate what you're feeling comfortable with to the other person in order to make this work. And I really can't stress enough that in this time, we need to really focus on trying to make things work. Is there another guy or girl around the corner? There is. There is. I'm not going to lie. There really is. But I will tell you that my clients that are 50 and 55 and 65 are still playing that game. And you know what? Do they still have dates? They do, but they're not going to have children. They're not going to have families. And so they keep thinking that there's another one better around the corner. And many of them have never been married. And so, I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that you should just marry anybody. I'm not actually a big pusher of that. But I am saying that sometimes things need to be given a shot, need to be given a chance. These are real times. These are deep times. The only pitfall of a time like this is that sometimes we can become so introspective and we become so real, like, I don't know, is Mashiach coming? Is the world coming to an end? Like, what does Hashem want from us? We get so introspective and deep that we forget to get to know the actual person. And we're just talking about the situation and Hashem and what does Hashem want from us, which is all wonderful and good. But we have to make sure that if we're dating somebody, we're also focused mainly on getting to know them to see if their qualities would be compatible to mine, so that we can make this work long term, not just during the lifespan of Corona, right? So I hope that I don't have to say that, but I figured I would just kind of throw that in. And I'd like to see if Leora has any other things that she'd like to jump in with.
I love what you said about Europe and how, and the shtetls, and how there was that possibility that was more of a probability. The mindset was a very healthy mindset. The mindset was, I'm in this to make this work. I want to see if this could happen. I just want to say, as a shadchan, I love working with people that have the mindset. It's an optimistic, it's realistic also, but there's an optimism there, type of a mindset, which is, I really want to make it work, or I really hope I'm going to, try to see this through, versus people who are like, yeah, I'll go out. How was the date? It was fine. I guess I should go out again. Just as a receiver of hearing communication, I so appreciate working with somebody who I'm probably going to see them down the aisle, whether it's me or a different shadchan. It's just so nice to work with people who are trying to make it work. And even not so many years ago, like even in America, just a few decades ago, when people tried to make it work, the mindset was, I want to try to make it work. I know a couple that was dating. They're grandparents many times over at this point, and they said that when they were dating each other, the guy turned to the girl and he said, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not feeling it. So she said, what do you want to feel? He's like, I don't know. I feel like I'm supposed to like hear bells and whistles. So she said, do you want me to bring bells and whistles on the next date? I could ring bells and whistles, you know? Anyway, they are more than happily married. They're much, much, much older. They are fabulous people. And I took from her story, you know, this woman who told me her story, I took from her story that we almost feel like we know what we're supposed to be marrying. We have it all figured out. It's sort of like, and we've really been hurt by the way that society, there's a lot of benefits to society. There's a lot of benefits to technology. And with everything, there's good and there's bad. And we need to be honest with ourselves about the bad part. And it's sort of like, you know, Amazon. Or I'll look at this resume. Is that of interest? Next. Next. I'm not saying you should look at every resume and say maybe there's something better. See where it's coming from. Maybe somebody knows you and they know your personality and they know this other person and something struck them that they really think you might like each other. You might appreciate each other. You have the same values. They think you have similar backgrounds. They think that you both have the same goals in life. Why would that be knocked off the table? Because they didn't go to the college that you liked.
They didn't go to college.
What?
Or they didn't go to college.
Or they didn't go to college. I had a guy who, a girl said no to him because he didn't go to university and she wants a guy with an education. Little did she realize, and I tried to explain it to her, that he had an opportunity, he had a wonderful opportunity, a parnas opportunity that people will go for years to college to get into such, such an industry. But he got in prior to finishing his degree. So he was going to do it. But there's almost like this short-sighted, narrow-minded, I have to have it all figured out. Something I figured out is that I have nothing figured out right now. The only thing I figured out is that we're all taking a step back.
And we are not in charge of anything.
Today,
I'm going outside.
I was taking a walk with my girls because that's something I could do. I could take a walk outside. I'm so thankful to Hashem that I could walk outside. I can't go to the stores, but but I could walk outside. And all of a sudden I saw this beautiful red cardinal. And I looked at it and I was like, that's so beautiful. Like, when do we stop and take a step back and look at what we have in front of us? We have so many wonderful opportunities in front of us. We have so many wonderful girls that are being read to us. We have so many wonderful boys that are being read to us. And we do. We just have to take another look at it. What about this? What about taking a look at the list of people who we already dated? What about that one? Maybe there's somebody I gave a quick note to. Maybe I want to be considerate. Reach out to the shadchan.
So I want to add to that. I want to add to that because I think that there might be some people that say, oh, that's just ridiculous. I can't just make anything work in front of me. What does that mean? That's just kind of very narrow scoped and I just don't feel comfortable hearing that. And so I use a concept called seeds versus plants, okay? So a lot of people go out with this mindset of like, I need to see a developed plant in this area, whether or not it's intelligence, whether or not it's beauty, whether or not it's personality, midos. I need to see a fully blossomed, developed version of whichever area of a person I'm looking for. And typically when you're younger and dating, you're just not going to see that because you're young and you're not so developed. What we're looking for is not fully developed plants. What we're looking for is seeds. We're looking for potential. And when we plant those seeds and we water those seeds and we nurture those seeds with sunshine and patience and love and care, those will grow into the plants that we're looking for. So what I think Leora means is that yes, if you see someone that has those seeds, the potential is there. A lot of the qualities that you're looking for are there. It hasn't been perfectly developed yet. It hasn't been fully grown yet. It needs time. It needs sunshine. It needs water to grow, but it's there. That's something that could be visited. If there's something that has no seeds, I cannot stand this person's company. I just want to go home. I'm so, unattracted. We have nothing to talk about. These are not areas in which we're forcing people to say, yes, try to go make that work.
Right,
We're
not
talking
at all.
about when there are seeds that can be planted and people tend to toss it away because it's not exactly what they had in mind, or they don't see the long-term plant, blossoming. They just kind of toss away the fact that there are seeds there, but it's not as developed as our brother or as our father or as our mother, right? The icon of men and women that we use as role models, which Baruch Hashem, many of us have wonderful role models, but when we go on a date, we're dealing with someone who's undeveloped because they're young and they're single, right? When you're married, you work on each other together as a team, and that what emerges from there is somebody that's greater than themselves, because now it's two. And then you have kids, you have to give to them, so you become a giver in a way that you never could have been a giver when you were single. And so I think for those people that have the seeds, we have to say, I'm willing to accept that there are seeds here that need to grow. They need to be nurtured. They need to be watered. But we're not there yet, and that's okay. I'm still going to stick it out and try to see what I can make of this.
And there's going to be plenty of people that will go down their list of people they've gone out with, and there will be nobody shaykh for them.
Yes.
And that's okay too.
Correct. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that we haven't covered about the dating. We did FaceTime and Zoom and phone calls, dating ideas. And like I said, there are going to be people who are going to choose not to date. And if you are choosing not to date, think about what it is that you feel will be most productive for you to work on now. Is it best for you to work on, working on your resume, sending out those videos to shutdown? Maybe I need to read a book on fear of marriage. Fear and anxiety of marriage is something that comes up a lot with a lot of people that I work with. Maybe I have trouble making decisions. Maybe I'm stuck on something, and you know what? It really doesn't have to do with me. I kind of grew up in a home where I didn't see a healthy marriage, and I need to find some role models of healthy couples that I could emulate because I am stuck. And maybe I need some help because I'm stuck. What are those things that if you're choosing not to date, or even if you're choosing to date but dates are not coming up, which happens from time to time, what am I choosing to work on now while I have all of this extra time on my hands that I can be kind of working through that training myself for that marathon, for those dates when they do actually come up and we're faced with them. So I think that those would be some healthy tips. I think that we might be ready for some questions. Is that possible? Am I missing anything?
I just want to add one thing before we throw out the questions.
Sure.
Okay. I also want to say that it is a time that I think all singles should know that shidduchim are thinking about you more than ever. Yes, we're home, we're busy, some of us are working remotely, the house is filled with the kids. At the same time, we are thinking so much about ideas because there is some downtime. Even if the downtime is it's not that I'm at work and I can't take phone calls or I can't respond to messages. It's a little calmer. Sometimes it's crazier, some moments, but sometimes it's calmer. And we are thinking about you. I have had such a nice amount of beautiful messages from people sending me messages saying, I want to know how you're doing, how you're managing. Just wanted to let you know that if you think of anyone for me, I'd really appreciate it. And I thought it was so sweet because it was said in such a calm way, and it was said in such a, I just want to remind you about me type of a way. And, to all of them, I wrote back, thank you so much for reaching out, and how are you doing? And I want to know how they're doing and how they're handling the situation. But everyone's still putting shidduchim together. Very often, if I come up with an idea, I always laugh, like right before my son's bar mitzvah, I'm like, this is it. I'm going to finish all shidduchim now, and I'm not going to do anything a month before the bar mitzvah. So of course, 2 weeks before the bar mitzvah, a shidduch that I read 3 months ago said, okay, we're giving a yes. So I'm like, so I had to run and go do it because Well, it was a good idea. So in Baruch Hashem, they got married, But so often, like, people have ideas and we put lists together like, okay, I really want to work on this idea. I want to work on this idea. I want to work on this idea. And sometimes we have to pace ourselves. We have to pace ourselves saying, I can only do 2 shidduchim at a time. I can only do 6 at a time. I can only do 1 at a time. But we're still putting it together. It's always being worked on. How often does a shidduch come up that you give a yes to weeks later, months later? So everyone is still working on shidduchim. So no one is alone here. Even if there's a little bit of this wait period or wait to meet in person, we're not saying wait with shidduchim. No Rabbanim have come out saying wait with reading ideas. Everyone is saying read ideas. Shidduchim are still happening. So that is what we are still doing, and that is definitely a message I wanted to give over.
And I think that, overall, this hasn't changed at all, that how we're going to choose to handle the situation, either negatively or positively, is definitely going to have an effect on the types of shidduchim that we attract and the kinds of shidduchim that people want to even set us up with if they do. When you take a challenge, and this is a challenge for everyone, there's no one that is not challenged here. Are you handling it positively? What do you do when life throws you a curveball that you completely didn't see coming? What do you do? Like, how do you handle that, right? So I think that this is a good way for us to see the real side of people and how we handle challenge. And with a smile and positivity, it's beyond attractive to a guy, to a girl. And I think if we could all really try to say, like, it's amazing. If you just go online, it's just a most amazing thing to watch Klal Yisrael figure out every which way to keep ourselves busy, to make weddings and, in the parking lot, and balconies are like singing and dancing in Eretz Yisrael. Like, there's just all the online material for kids and crafts and things to do. It's just really unbelievable. Like, Mikam Klal Yisrael, to be able to like figure out ways and how to like make everything work. And so like Hashem tests us, and we were able to do it. We can make it through, and we definitely can make it through a lot better together, and with a smile. So with that, let's try to go to some of your questions. I have a bunch of emailed questions right here. I'm just going to go through them as we speak. Give me a second while I just pull it up. Okay. All right. So, should we be flying to go on dates? I think that it's quite clear at this point that flying is not a very good idea. I would definitely not recommend flying. There might be situations where somebody should fly somewhere. I would recommend not just for the, I'm not a doctor, but just all the shared air is not a good idea. So that was a pretty simple one. But obviously we gave a lot of other ideas in which, walks, boardwalks, talking on the phone, Skyping, Zooming. There's lots of things that you can do. Okay, next one is what do I do if I've been dating a girl very seriously and we're holding by getting engaged? Engagements have already been discussed. So luckily you're past that awkward first stage of dating. I would really just continue by phone and FaceTime, Zoom, whatever it is, because it seems like you've really gotten past the beginning awkwardness, and continue what needs to be gone through. So try to have a conversation, once or twice a week, maybe even 3 times a week, and a Zoom once or twice a week. So let's say if you're doing 2 Zooms, maybe 2 Zooms and 2 phone calls, but try to make it goal oriented. So for instance, if you really have something that you want to bring up, don't just show up empty handed, just like you prepare for a date. Prepare what you'd like to discuss. I really want to get a more handle on a few last minute things before we were to get engaged. What will we do? And it's true, some engagements might be held up. Some engagements might happen regardless. And this is very, very sad. It's hard to watch. I have a variety of couples that have gotten engaged. They never had a VART. There's nobody who wants to host a VART, not a hall, not a home. They don't know when they're getting married, and it's difficult. These are the realities of today. Nobody knows what tomorrow is going to bring. So everyone's just trying to make it day by day and do the best that they can. But I would say that a couple's already holding by engagement. That's actually useful because they're already past that awkward stage. They can really use Zoom to just kind of deepen that connection, deepen that relationship until they're actually ready to make it official. And if they're ready to make it official, that's going to be depending on their families and their limited amounts of friends that are willing to come to a very potentially spaced out l'chaim outside in a parking lot somewhere. I don't know. But I would say that you should be thankful that you found each other, and that's it. Be thankful you found each other, and let's not worry about all the other details. Okay, let's bring up a few others here. So somebody wanted to know, why is it that shadchanim sometimes can't take no for an answer? I'm going to tell you why shadchanim can't take no for an answer.
This has nothing to do with quarantine.
This has nothing to do with quarantine. A lot of these questions, by the way, don't have anything to do with quarantine. So let me tell you, I can really play both sides of the fence there. I read a lot of Shidduchim. I was on the other side for many, many years. I could really give you both sides. So on one hand, I really hear, why can't shadchanim take a no? Let me tell you why they can't take a no. Because A, and I say this respectfully, but they've been married. So because they understand relationships, when they see a really good potential relationship, they don't want to let it go because it really has a high potential to work. And as much as you might think it doesn't fit into the perfect box that I had in mind, they know that a lot of the core goals and values or backgrounds or personalities really jive very nicely together. So they're like, no, don't say no. This is such a nice idea. This could really make a nice shidduch, like, please give it a chance. So they are willing to put their pride on the edge to ask you again and make themselves look like a fool. You know why? Because they care more about you than they care about themselves. They're willing to make themselves look like a fool because the mere chance that you would say yes on the second or third round might actually walk you down the aisle. And for that, they say, forget about my pride. It doesn't matter. It's not important. What's important is helping this person. So if you want to continue to say no, that is your prerogative. No one's going to tell you that you have to. That's your prerogative. But at least take a moment of Hakar Satov to realize that the shadchan is putting herself out there multiple times to read the same shidduch, obviously because she thinks it's a very good idea. And sometimes things change because maybe Corona sometimes has made people realize like what's really important. Maybe because you went out with a girl that was exactly what you thought you wanted and it didn't work. Maybe a year has passed and you're still single and you're ready to be a little bit more flexible in certain areas. So she figures, I'll give it a shot. So instead of being annoyed, say, wow, look at this person who's willing to put their pride aside and care about my well-being because they so badly want to see me married. And they clearly think this is a good idea that they'd like me to reconsider. So that's probably why they have a married perspective. So they understand relationships more deeply because they've been there. And they may see something a little bit different than you may see it because they're married. So I would give that to them. But if it really doesn't work for you, you have the prerogative to say no. That's all. And you might even have the prerogative to say, I really appreciate you bringing it up. You brought her name up already 3-4 times. I really don't want to go out. It's not an option. I really would appreciate it if you could just respectfully not bring it up anymore. There's a nice way to say everything. And I think that could be, that could be said respectfully, obviously respectfully, but that's how I would answer that question. All right, let's go on to the next one. Okay, how are goals, expectations, and norms of a Zoom date different than an in-person date? How does this change between an initial date and dates that are further along? Okay, so I think we talked about a little bit that Zoom dates should be a little bit shorter. Expectations is like you have to pay more attention to a Zoom date because you're not walking and talking or eating or doing something else. So it was a little bit harder to focus for some people. So we want to try to keep it a little bit shorter. As things are moving on though, if the dates are going well, then you want to have a game plan. Like, what would I like to see covered during this date? You know, we haven't really talked about hashkafa. I would really love to speak about hashkafa. And you'd say, you know, Oorah, I've really been having a lovely time with you, and I've been really enjoying our Zoom dates. And I figured, like, I'd really like to know where you stand hashkafically in a few areas because we never really talked about it. You know, so if the guy or the girl has some goals that they'd like to accomplish on a date, there's nothing wrong with bringing that up and trying to move things forward and move things along as needed. Don't wait for Corona to be done to, don't use Zoom as a way to stall so that you could just get to your face-to-face date and talk about all the real stuff, because this might be going on for a long time, probably more than 2 or 3 weeks. We're probably talking in the months, between 3 and 6. So we want to prepare ourselves that if this is the new reality for the shorter or longer term, then we are not stalling and waiting for Corona till I could just have that date, but we're able to like really move things forward. How far or should a relationship progress without meeting in person? It sounds like a lot of shidduchim will at least start out via Zoom, but then what? With the developing situation, it is unclear what mobility there will be in the near future and how long it'll take for things to return to normal. If a scenario develops where it is not possible to meet in person for months, what does that mean for shidduchim? Like I said, this is not an ideal situation. We are all going to have to make it work the best we can. You know, my husband lived in Maryland and I lived in New York, and we both had crazy busy schedules and we could not get out to see each other all the time. So what happened was every 2 weeks he would come to New York, we date for an intensive weekend, and every 2 weeks I would come to Maryland and date for an intensive weekend. And in between that, we would talk, we would Skype, we would Zoom, and I don't know, we're married. Like it worked, you know, like we made it happen. So if a relationship is going to fall apart because of Zoom, I would venture to say it's probably not Zoom. Okay. There are scenarios where people get uncomfortable and that the lack of face-to-face contact makes it a little bit unnatural. I agree, this is not ideal, but a relationship does have to have some of its own momentum that will carry it forward. And if two people enjoy each other's company and enjoy conversation and are hitting it off, for the most part, it's not Zoom that's going to be to blame while the whole thing fell apart. It's obviously not ideal. We're going to have to do the best that we can here and take it day by day. So yeah, as soon as you can have a face-to-face date and both of you are able to do that, whether or not you're in different cities, whether or not your cities have different regulations, or that your parents are allowing, or somebody is waiting for some sick family member to get better, you know, we have to be respectful of everyone's boundaries. So we're doing the best that we can. Okay, next question.
Also, I think that people are going to naturally or unnaturally get more comfortable with Zoom. Yes. I think that's also a big important piece, that if it's something that's new to you, it's uncomfortable. If it's something that you never wanted to do in the past because you didn't have to, then you didn't do it.
Right.
But day-to-day things are changing, and part of that is exercising that flexibility. And part of the flexibility is saying, in order for me to date right now, I'm going to have to exercise this new experience, and I'm going to have to start Zooming. And at the beginning, it's uncomfortable, you know, but the more you're on it, the more you get comfortable with it, and the more you loosen up and you start laughing with each other, and naturally, like, you'll get more comfortable with the Zoom as time goes on. And regarding when you should meet with a person, if the Zooms are going well and the phone calls are going well, what do? I guess you have a bashau, like the Hasidim do, you know, and you sit there and you get permission from your doctor, from your Rav, whatever it is, you get your clearance, and you meet face to face. No one's getting engaged without meeting face to face. I don't think that I've ever heard of anybody who did that, at least in our circles. And you should definitely take the guidance of your Rav, Meretz Hashem, you know, should you get there. You know, halavai, everyone should get there, you know, during this time period.
I think that it's going to also be as awkward as we make it. I think the first couple of Zooms might be a little bit awkward, but then we're going to slowly get over it, because this is a lot of our new reality. And slowly, it's like, you know, if I told you I was recording a conversation, you think about it for the first couple of minutes, but then you forget about it because you just keep going with conversation. You forget that it's even there. And I would add, like, you know, I'm sure Razel and Rabbi Leifer and Leora know nothing about this, but life is all about being flexible. I mean, there are only
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, I mean, there are only many times a day that, like, you plan A and then B happens, and then it's like we're all in the car going somewhere and we're late, and then somebody has a dirty diaper, and then this one throws up, and
it's all curveballs.
It's like, just, this is life. And you know what? If we can start flexing these muscles today, you will be much, much better off in marriage. Let me tell you.
100%.
So it starts
also,
with Corona.
Rachel, there's so many times when, like, we're comfortable Skyping people that we know. We're comfortable FaceTiming, you know, my friend in Israel, my friend who lives here or there, or different states, when we want to see each other. We got comfortable with this concept of Skype and Zoom. We are comfortable with it. We're just not comfortable with it with somebody we don't know yet.
Right.
But we want to get to know them.
Well, and we have to work at it. It'll take a little bit of work. And I will say that whenever Corona dies down, or when things, let's say there's a relationship that started on Zoom and eventually goes to face-to-face, there will be a transition time where like, oh, this is weird. I only knew this person on Zoom and now I'm seeing them face-to-face and I feel like this is a different person. There will be a transition time where it will be a little awkward, but you will get over it and it will be fine. It's just that little transition time of like, I'm so used to this person being on a screen and now all of a sudden they're a real person, right? So that takes a little bit. It's like having these deep conversations with text and not actually having real conversations. So that could be, we want to make sure that eventually, obviously the goal is to be face to face, but for now we're going to do, the best that we can with what we've got. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Oh, yeah, okay. Why don't shadchanim get back to me? Okay, so yeah. So here's the thing. Again, I'm going to play both sides of the fence there. If a shadchan feels that they cannot handle the volume, they've got a busy life, work, kids, family balance, and it's too much for them, then they should cut down on the amount of shidduchim that they're doing, because if they're unable to do that, and that's understandable, they should cut down on the amount of shidduchim that they're doing. And I do encourage shadchanim a lot to really be careful and be sensitive and call people back, because they're sitting there and they're waiting. And I remember being single, going out with a guy that I really liked and waiting for his answer. It was like literally going to the doctor and waiting for an important test result. And it was like every minute just felt like an hour. Just what did he say? Just yes or no. And so I really do encourage shadchanim to be careful and set an alarm when you need to call somebody so that we could be sensitive to singles' feelings. It's true. Now, with that said, people are human, and singles only have one person to care for, and that is themselves. And I don't mean to say that they're selfish on purpose. They're selfish by definition of the situation, and that's okay. I was single, I was selfish too. But when you're dealing with getting dinner on the table, changing diapers, going to work, community events, setting people up in Shidduchim, getting the house ready for Yom or Shabbos, and trying to put on a smiling face and be awake through all of it, it could be very overwhelming for a lot of people. And a lot of shadchanim mean so well, but the daylight gets away with them, and they meant to call and they should have called and they forgot. Which is why I recommend that people just set an alarm. I need to call, Moshe back at 2:00 to give an answer about a girl. But not everybody is as organized, and you should just understand something, that midos don't split. I've said this before, midos don't split. A midah is a measurement, and that measurement is within a spectrum. So when you have somebody like a shadchan who's super creative and has great ideas like shidduchim, and all these ideas come to them like this one and that one, and they're making tons of shidduchim, they might not be as timely, they might not be as organized, but they're very creative and they think out of the box, which is why they thought of this great shidduch. But they might not always be able to do the follow-up as best as you would like. Okay, so try to cut them some slack. Try to respectfully ask, I completely understand if you're busy. Can you give me a time slot in which I can call you? What time would work for you? Would you rather me call you early in the morning, late at night? What's a time slot? I really just need 10 minutes of your time at the end of a day to find out what she said and what her feedback was. I think that's fair. If you give a shadchan a small window that you're asking them when would be good for them, I think that that's very fair. And if it's a difficult time, look at your calendar. If it's any erev, anything, be respectful. There's a lot going on with a family, with kids, with Yom preparation and community, and trying to hold down a job and all the rest. There's a lot going on. So try to just be respectful of the time. If after asking them multiple times to call you back and they just don't seem to be able to do it, or they can never get back to you when they say they can, you might want to ask them and say, it seems like you might be very overwhelmed. Would you mind greatly if I were to, use a different shadchan, just because we would like to move things along, and I completely understand that you're busy and overwhelmed, but I just need to know that I can get back, someone can get back to me so that I can move this forward. Most of the time, people will say 100%, I'm so busy, I don't have time, or they're saying, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, no, I'm going to make this a priority. Okay, so those are the two choices, reasons. I think that both sides have to be flexible with each other. I hope that has kind of answered.
Racha, may I add, and I think it's a great opportunity to bring up that it's also important that you find out how your shadchan likes to communicate.
That's a good idea.
Does your shadchan want you to call them? Do they want you to do a text? Do they want you to leave a WhatsApp voice message? A lot of times I find that I don't really have, it's nothing bad, but I don't really necessarily feel that it's appropriate that I should be chasing after somebody to give me an answer. I have a boy waiting for an answer, and the girl's like, yeah, I was so busy today. And I'm like, oh, do you think you were able to call me maybe like during your lunch break? No, I need time to myself then. It's like, okay. I like to call late in the evening. And it's like, okay, but what if I'm not available in the evening? And I feel that it's funny. So I feel that's very important for shadchanim and for singles to communicate to the other one how they're going to communicate during the shidduch during the shidduch that's going out, during that process. So that it's not only, why doesn't the shadchan get back to me? And shadchanim should always get back to you. Always. Even if it's I'm so sorry, I meant to get back to you, and something came up, I wasn't able to speak to you at that time. A shadchan should always, always, always get back to you. And a single should always, always, always get back to a shadchan. There's no difference. It's just good communication, and it's good midos. And it's, like you said before, there's a nice way to say everything, like when I get a message on my phone, also for myself, sometimes I won't even open the message because I'm like, I know I need to respond to that person. So I'll actually leave it untouched. I won't open the text yet. This way I'll know that I have it waiting for me on my phone, and then I'll respond. But you should definitely find out how your shadchan likes to communicate, what their availability is. And some will have very little availability. And Rachel, I love what you said, to say to the shadchan, is there 10 minutes? Do you have 10 minutes to give me tonight? Or I have an idea, I need your time, can you let me know? And be mindful. Some people sleep early. Yeah, I love that. I love that a lot.
That's very practical, because most people or shadchanim don't have 2 hours, because you realize you're not the only single that they're speaking to. But if you ask them for a time and a 10-minute, 15-minute slot, they usually will be able to make that time available to you. Okay, let's move on to the next question. What would you suggest to make a fun virtual date? Obviously, it's easy to talk and have tea or coffee and have a video chat, but there's a loss of sort of fun outings. Are there any ideas you can have to create some sort of date that would be fun virtually instead of bowling or mini golf, Dave and Buster's? So I was actually thinking that we can do something like, let's say, anyone know what words with friends are? Okay, so it's kind of like Scrabble. And you make a word, each person, you're playing words with friends. You can play with them on your phone. And every time you make a word, you've got to ask them something about themselves that's connected to that word. Okay, so whatever word you've made through that Scrabble board, you've got to figure out a creative way to ask them something that you never knew before, or something that you'd like to know more about them. And that could be a way to like kind of play a game, but also interact with them. Like I said before, there's all sorts of virtual aquariums, virtual museums that you can go to places all over the world. It's actually fascinating that you can both be taking a tour and then afterwards like discussing it, and someone might have like an expertise in a certain area. Like I said, this is obviously awkward and not as natural as we would like. One of the ways in which I love to deal with awkward is to just call it out. There is this kind of awkward. Like, I'd love to see you in person, and I'd love to have a face-to-face coffee with you, but we just can't. So I'm just going to call it out. It's awkward. What can we do? It's awkward. And then everyone laughs, and everyone just kind of like, just kind of chill out, and then we can just have the conversation. It's also great when you need to have an awkward conversation of like, this is really awkward, but we've been dating for 3 months and you never told me that you had a broken engagement, and this is going to be an awkward conversation. Okay, Leora, I hope it's okay that we're going to have this awkward conversation. So it's going to be awkward. Just prepare yourself. But now that you know that it's going to be awkward, we can get it all out. I'm just curious why you didn't think to tell me about your broken engagement, that we've been going out for 3 months. You never shared that with me. So already we've gotten the awkwardness out of the way. Okay, we don't have to be uncomfortable. We're just going to have a straight conversation, and then we can talk about it. So if we can call out the awkwardness, I think we could just make the whole awkwardness kind of like go away as best as we can, for lack of better options. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Saying no after one Zoom date, what are your thoughts, and when, if to do so? Okay, so
I will so happily let you answer that one.
If you're having a Zoom date for about half an hour, 45 minutes, and there's complete silence for all of that time, that is not a good sign. I get that it's awkward. I get that it's Zoom. I get that people are not comfortable. But you should be able to come up with something to say. If there's absolutely nothing to say, or she's so unattractive that you cannot handle it, there are ways to say no. But obviously the mindset is to try to give things another chance, because people are nervous, people are uncomfortable, the whole Zoom thing is uncomfortable. So just like you would give someone a face-to-face a second date, I would say give a Zoom date probably an extra chance, because it's extra awkward and it also feels just distant. So we want to try to bridge that gap by just giving a little bit more time. And the Zoom date we said is going to be shorter. So we're allowing it to be shorter because it's awkward, but because it's shorter, you also have less time to really get to know this person. So you really kind of need a little bit more of an extra date or two before you actually just completely toss it. Again, unless we're talking, we said nothing for 45 minutes. It was so uncomfortable that I cannot do that again, okay? So every person knows themselves and what they can handle, but that's what I would say for that. Okay, how to deal with rejection and taking it personally, especially with so much investment. Also, can it be a cop-out when one says it's no because of no chemistry? It's hard to pinpoint what exactly went wrong. So this is a really interesting question, and I actually have an article on this that I think could be very, very helpful. It's about breakups going from we to I, and I'm glad to attach that link at the end of the session. What I really need to say about this, it's a longer conversation, but I'm just going to sum it up. It's true. It's very unsettling to get a no and not know what it's about. But here's the thing. The most important message to take away is nobody really wants to be with someone who doesn't want to be with them.
I always say, go where you're wanted.
Go where you're wanted. We tend to go where we're not wanted, and then we wonder why we're not wanted in that place, right? So let's say a guy who doesn't come from a very wealthy home wants a girl from a very, very wealthy family, and he can't figure out why all these girls are saying no to him, because she doesn't want a man from that background, because it doesn't mesh with how she was raised, right? So if a guy would say, I'm willing to go with a guy from my background, he'd probably be a lot more accepted and wanted there. So I know it's painful to get that no. Every no, it's hard to see this now. I know that it's hard to see this now. I've been there, I've done that. It's very hard to see how every no kind of pushes us in a certain direction. It pushes us away from the ones that we thought were right, but it actually pushes us towards the one that is right for us, because well, I could have married the last guy. That could have been wrong, but Hashem said no. He pushed me away from that, which pushed me away from that guy and away from that girl and away from that guy, which eventually led me to that right person. So all of those no's are actually pushing you to the right person, even though we can't see that at the moment. But that is what happens. My husband used to always say, I can't believe you waited for me for 14 years. I'm like, I didn't wait for you. I tried to get married. They just never worked out, Therefore, I was available. So if we can have that perspective of, I don't want to be with someone who doesn't want to be with me. Imagine if you want to be with this person so badly and they don't want to be with you. Imagine how great it'll feel when you want to be with someone so badly and they do want to be with you. Okay, so look at that for the future of hope and what there is to look forward to, because that's what is there to come. Like that's what's to come for you. And so that should be encouraging. Now, it's true that a lot of times we don't always give clear answers. And the reason why guys and girls don't give clear answers is because they don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, okay? And that's understandable. If a guy is completely unattracted to a girl, it's not appropriate to say that to the girl. It just isn't. And he's not going to say that. Sometimes the chemistry is off. Sometimes the intelligence is off. Sometimes the personality is off. And so no chemistry is like a very powerful way of saying, like, it's just not for me. And I would really encourage everyone to say, like, you know what? I invested time, I learned a lot, but instead of me investing more time and more emotion, at least I know now and I can move on. And the most important word I tell people is next. Move on, because every date that you go on with the wrong person is spending quality time with someone else's spouse. Okay? We want to limit that because we want you spending quality time with your spouse. So let's try to not focus on that, go where we're wanted, and appreciate that the best is yet to come, because the person you're meant to be with is going to want you just as much, if not more, than you want them. And so if you think that you were just crazy about this person, you're going to be even crazier by the time you get to that end point. So that should be something to look forward to. Okay. Any more questions here? We might have actually covered them. Any other questions that Rabbi Leifer or Razel or Leora feel that we should bring up before we just kind of summarize and close? No? Okay.
I think we could open up if anyone has any questions.
I think Roy Leifer would like to say something.
Yeah, no, I was about to say that if anyone wants to unmute themselves now and they want to, ask any questions, maybe we could do that for a little bit.
Sure.
And I think that will open it up that you can either ask a question, hopefully we'll be able to assist, or if you'd like to add in a piece of Shidduch for everybody at this time, and maybe some thoughts that you've had that you want to share with everybody, we would love to hear from you.
So one thing that, I think is really important is that Corona has sort of, isolated us more than we would like, obviously. And we look at that as a negative, but sometimes it's really a positive because it's forcing us to go within ourselves, within our families, to dig deep, to distance ourselves from work, from friends, from weddings, to all the distractions. I know how it is. Being single could be so hard that it's so easy to just distract ourselves with either watching something on TV or on the internet, going to a wedding, going to exercise, going to shir, go to my friend, go to the l'chaim, go to the bris. We're so busy that we don't ever take any time to think. And sometimes thinking is very, very painful, but it's also extremely healthy. So taking this time to think, to process, to be alone with ourselves and really spend time with ourselves, to enjoy being with ourselves is actually the best way that you can have a healthy relationship. Because when people individually are happy with who they are confident, are developed, are at peace with who they are on their own, and you marry another person who is the simcha, who is calm, who is happy and confident with who they are on their own, you put that together, that is a unbelievable power, a tremendous power. But when people are getting married because I need you to be what I can't and you need me to be what you can't, and we can't actually stand on our own, and we've never actually thought about who we actually are, that marriage is going to need a lot of help, a lot of help. So I would encourage you people, instead of rejecting this isolation, to really embrace it and to thank you, Hashem, for giving this to us so that we are forced to take this time to be with ourselves, to recognize what's really important, to focus on working through what we need to work through so that when we meet that right guy, we're prepared, we're ready, we're positive to connect with that person and build something that's infinitely greater than we can build on our own. Okay, anyone else have any last minute questions? Otherwise, I think we are going to...
I would love to hear from some people.
Anyone? I'm open. Let's see if we're getting any more emails here.
All you have to do is unmute yourself.
There are questions that are on the chat, you guys. Can you see those?
On the chat?
Yeah,
Okay, let me
down
see.
below. Can you
I'm
see?
only getting...
Thanks, Chaya. Where do we find it?
I can read them to you if you want.
Sure.
Can you not see them?
Oh, I see them now.
Chat. See chat. Do you see that?
Got it.
Okay.
Can you read them, Leora? Because I don't...
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to meet you too. Okay, so we'll be in touch with that person afterwards. Let's see.
Anyone who
wants
has
to know if
any...
It was recorded.
It has been recorded and it will be shared, yes.
Okay, because somebody
Anyone who
said,
has personal questions that are more of a private, personal nature, you can reach out to myself or Leora privately. I'm happy to speak with anyone that needs privately. This is really more general questions for the general dating, population / Corona focused.
Am I allowed to say that I will meet with people? I can talk to people too as
Who's
a dating
speaking?
mentor for, it's Chaya Major.
Oh, hi, how are you?
I'm good. As a dating mentor for the Rebbetzins program too, I'm happy to speak with people as well. So.
Okay, great.
thank you. So we have a question here. Somebody wants to know if you can ask questions. You can ask questions there, or you could just unmute yourself. What if I'm dating a guy and we're at around date 5 or 6? Should we be spending a lot of time on Zoom and having serious conversations?
Okay, so numbers of dates are not as important as where the relationship is actually holding, because numbers can be different for different people. What I would say is we want to make sure that things are moving forward. So if things are moving forward and you both feel more comfortable on the phone having certain conversations, that's fine. If you feel that Zoom, so if people find Zoom just overwhelming to be doing so much of it, then maybe you want to alternate doing a phone and a Zoom and alternate that way. But the goal is that we should be moving forward in some way, that we're covering some kind of ground, and we want to intersperse that with like a virtual tour or a game, or maybe we're bringing our food to Skype, but we're kind of pretending like we're going out to eat, but something that allows us to enjoy each other's company and also move things forward. Like I said before, we're not just waiting to have a real date. Like, this is not just ending, oh, Corona's just a 2-week break and then we're just gonna go back to regular dating in 2 weeks. This is probably gonna be more than a few months. So we wanna just keep that in mind so that we don't just use Zoom as like a stalling until we get to the date. We need to start dating now.
Right. Somebody asked how long the first date on Zoom should be. So we said about 45 minutes. Could be
Half an hour, 45 minutes, correct.
Somebody asked about meeting shadchanim now. So I think the same way that some individuals are going to be uncomfortable dating in close proximity to each other. So the shadchan is going to have the same concern. Some people are not.
Which is why I think these videos, sending out these videos, introducing yourself in addition to your resume, which kind of gives me a more interactive, animated version of yourself, would be very, very helpful. So I think that if people made some of those videos about themselves and sent it out to shadchanim, it would be very useful to them.
Right. Also, the Zoom is also something that's a possibility for meeting shadchanim on Zoom. I have a young lady who sent me she said, can I FaceTime you? I said, sure. I guess I was a little old fashioned. I'm like, I don't think this is going to work. And she FaceTimed me, and her whole personality, she was very comfortable. She just let her guard down. She made herself very comfortable. She's now my neighbor here in Connecticut. I was also making her shidduch. That was the one right before the bar mitzvah. And it was on Zoom. So, or Skype or FaceTime. So these are real possibilities. These are real networking tools to help us.
I do, by the way, know of a couple that got engaged. They met each other one time when they were in Israel. He had a flight the next day. They Zoomed for the next couple of months. She was in New York. He was in Israel. He was in Australia. And they Zoomed their entire 3 or 4 months of dating. And then he came to meet her parents, and they got engaged.
Wow.
They basically had one real date, and then at the end, I guess they had two. One at the beginning, one at the end, and then months in between of Zoom.
Got it.
So, if there's a will, there's a way. We can make this happen. We're not going months and months without people getting engaged. So we can make this happen. We just have to be flexible, and we have to just mentally shift what we look at as a typical date to being a little bit different, but also functional.
Got it. Now, some people are also asking if we can compile a list for them for any fun online games, any good conversation starters, and maybe that is something that we could talk about.
Yeah, we didn't talk about dating games, but dating games would be great to play over Zoom.
Or games or apps that that people
Yeah.
can do.
That's an idea.
And anyone who wants to get in touch with us, you can definitely reach out to Rabbi Leifer or Rebbetzins Zarabrowski, and we would be so more than happy, to get in touch, especially at this time. Does anybody want to unmute themselves? One person, just unmute yourself and speak to everyone, just to be machazik everybody during this time.
Hi.
Hi.
I don't know about chazak, but I just had a clarification question.
Sure.
First of all, thank you so much to everyone. I really appreciate it, and I felt like really get where I'm holding and how this is for me as a single person. So thank you for organizing this, and thank you for speaking and taking your time to do that. My question is, I know you mentioned earlier about getting in touch with shadchanim. Is it really okay to get in touch with the shadchanim now? I feel bad, being in touch, because I feel like people are so busy now with, everyone being at home and all the craziness, and people, let's say, not usually being at home for Pesach, and now they are, and preparing for Pesach and all those different things. I feel a little guilty, even if it's just as simple as sending an email, because then I'm going to kind of be expecting something back, even if they're saying, okay, I'll think about it or whatever. And I feel a little bit bad contacting people during this incredibly strange, crazy, and busy time.
It's very sweet, yeah.
I would say that, just ask. Okay, there's a respectful way to say it, and you could say something like, I completely understand if this is a difficult time for you, and if it is, I completely understand that you wouldn't have time to set people up. But I was wondering if you do have time, because some people do have extra time because their kids are more grown and they're not working now. So for some people, it could be a good time, and for some people, it could not. You just have to ask respectfully, and they'll be honest to share. I might have some time to speak to you a little later in the evening. I only have about 15, 20 minutes, but I definitely would love to, work on it. I have a little bit extra time right now, and so it could work for me. Other people say it's really a bad time. I'm so sorry, but I will really try to keep you in mind in the future. Everyone's going to respond differently. I think just being straightforward and asking is probably the best thing to do.
Okay. Thank you.
There. I also wanted to throw out something that's a little bit non-dating related that people might actually find interesting. So I know that for some people, there's a little bit of boredom that's setting in, because if you're home, you're not married, and you don't have kids, and you don't have to be at work, and your work for whatever reason can't be teleworking, then a lot of people are bored. And when we're bored, we tend to turn to things that are probably less productive. And when we're less productive, we don't feel as good about ourselves. And so this leads to this entire spiral that if we're doing this for more than a few months, might not be the best way to bring our optimum selves to the dating game. So this is just very random, but if anyone's interested, you can reach out to me. My husband created this website called stuckinjewish.com, which is basically a compilation of different resources for families, for children during this time. We're kind of like one website where everybody can go to, that they can get different resources, games, activities, reading material, virtual tours. And he created the website, but he doesn't have time to put everything together and compile it. So if anyone is interested in doing a chesed for Klal Yisrael and finding themselves a little bored and wants to do something meaningful, reach out to me privately. I'll tell you a little bit more about it. And the reason why I'm throwing it out there is really just because if we're feeling bored and we're getting into things that maybe we shouldn't be watching, reading, whatever that is, or we're feeling bored and we're not being productive and we're feeling down about ourselves, then when this is all over, we're going to be a shmata and not bringing our best selves to our dates. And so the goal here is to really do what we can to increase the kind of person that we are bringing to our next dates after this is, either going on now or continues later on. And so if anyone's interested, you can reach out to me privately.
And really, it's a great opportunity for chesed also. Even from home, there's a lot of chesedim that people are creatively coming up with. I've gotten an enormous amount of emails with different fundraising or helping with
grocery shopping for other people.
Grocery shopping for others, food drives, and there definitely are many opportunities. And really, like, Hashem should grant the whole Olam or full Shlema, and we should be able to.
I just want to mention that this we're all getting all these memes and emails and inundated with all this material, and it's like coming out of our ears, But there was one thing that really did, kind of stick out to me. This one meme that somebody sent to me that said, this Shabbos, March 21st, 2020, will be the first time in the 71 years of the history of Eretz Yisrael, which will have no transportation, no theaters, no sports, no restaurants, no beaches, no malls open on Shabbos. What's this week's parsha? Okay, what's this week's parsha's topic? Moshe is talking to Eretz Yisrael about keeping Shabbos. Eretz Yisrael and Bnei Yisrael are basically being forced to keep Shabbos, even though they might not want to, they will. And that just sends shivers up my spine. So we have a tremendous opportunity through just unifying together. We're all in this together. The whole world is in this together. From and not from, we're all in this together, unifying ourselves, inspiring ourselves, davening for everyone's health and security and mental health. Okay, that this should really, bring Mashiach very, very, very soon.
Amen.
Right? Thank you for joining. Good night.